Hello, I'm Pamela Davis. Welcome to episode 229 of the Well Done Life podcast. And hello, welcome back to episode 229 of the Well Done Life podcast. I'm your host, Pamela Davis. If you are new here, hey, how are you? Welcome. I am so glad that you're here with us this week. I hope that you will stay for a very long time. And if you've been here before, you guys know the deal. I love you deep. Thank you so much for continuing to support me on this journey. I wouldn't be here without you, and I am so grateful for you. I hope that you will continue to stay for a while and bring friends. So before we get started with this week's episode, I'd like to take a few moments before we get into everything to be foundational. I think it's really important that we set the stage because I really treat this podcast like a safe space. And so treating it like a safe space means that we have to make sure that our foundation, like a house, is built on two very strong tenets, and that is clarity and love. Clarity is really straightforward. I just want you to understand that I created the Well Done Life podcast and the brand because there was a time in my life where I felt like I needed to be in the presence of women who had a varied amount of experiences. I was at a point in my life where I was looking for resources outside of my friend circle who are amazing, but I wanted to talk to other people who were just going through different cycles of life. I was caregiving, I was grieving, I was in a whole different space, and I felt odd, I felt lost, and I felt like I wasn't able to connect with women of all levels and spaces and races even, because everybody has a journey, and I think there's a lot of us who have gone through things that we are experiencing right now. And instead of normally like kind of keeping it to ourselves, we need to start having conversations. We need to be able to talk and show other women that we are able to overcome anything that is set before us. And so since that space wasn't there when I needed it at that point in time, I wanted to create it. And so that's really one of the ways that the Well Done Life was formed. Really, it's about me sharing the good, the bad, the highs and lows of my journey, because I made a promise to God that if He got me through, I would never gatekeep it. I would share and hold it close and give it out to people who need it. And I also make it a point to highlight the experiences of other women in the community who are doing great things, because I, again, want to show you that you can overcome anything, and that just because you're in a season right now, you won't always be there, and that you can learn and avoid some of the pitfalls that all of us have taken. Because believe me, I've made tons of mistakes. I still make mistakes. And I hope that by me sharing my experiences, the authenticity of it will help you realize, you know what, I don't have to go that route, and that's okay. Or maybe I do want to go this route to get the result. You will choose what really matters to you in that particular time. But this space is all about sharing, caring, and love. And love is a second foundation. The main foundation is the root of all things in what we will do here, because everything, like I said, is going to be rooted in love. And with that, I like to make sure that every week before we really get into everything too, that I send prayers to you, because I truly believe in the power of prayer. I truly believe in the power of two or more people coming together in prayer to magnify it. So I am a firm believer that these things that I am praying that I'm going to share with you, you probably are praying the exact same thing, and our prayers are getting magnified and change is occurring. So this week, which is always probably going to be the same for a very long time because I feel like we need it, I'm going to be standing on peace. I am continuously standing on peace because the world is ghetto, and there are so many different things that are being thrown at us every single day. And I really do find that it is essential to carve out time where we get still, where we get quiet, where we allow our mind and body to be regulated from these thoughts that are constantly flowing within our head, or just the demands that are being placed upon us. So I'm praying for you to have moments, pockets, time of peace. And like I said, it can be just as simple as standing still sometimes to something obviously grand, a grand moment. Could be going out to dinner or lunch or breakfast by yourself, or just taking some time in your car by yourself, because I know there are many people like myself who enjoy having a car meal, because in that car, it's like there's nobody around me to ask me anything. Don't call my name. I am just sitting here enjoying this one piece of food that is giving me joy. Even in those moments, we are finding peace. Find your peace, claim it, be bold about it, do what you need to do for it, but make sure you carve it out, because in a world that is so noisy, you have to have moments where you are silent, where you give yourself an opportunity, like I said, to check in, to dial into you, and to be at peace and regulate your body. So I'm sending you prayers of peace. I'm also sending you, along with peace, prayers of clarity, because in those moments of stillness, that's like the best time to regulate our thoughts and to really get clear about a lot of things that we're experiencing. I know for myself, my mind is constantly racing. And so when I'm having those moments of peace, I do find that a lot of times I'm able to get clear about a lot of things that I'm feeling and I'm thinking. And I just feel like, especially in this day and time, it is very important to be able to have clarity. You have to be able to see things as they are, not what you think they are, what you perceive they are, but as they are. Facts over fiction. And it can be very difficult because, when you are out of balance, a lot of times we make decisions very irrationally, and we are not allowing our most clear self to present. And so you want to be able to, like I said, kind of have moments of peace and clarity together, because it'll help you move to your next level. It'll help you possibly avoid your next pitfall. It can help you from creating stress within your body, because a lot of times we are reacting to things that are coming to us out of a sense of fear, out of a sense of anxiety. And those things can cause you to make decisions that could be detrimental to yourself. So it is essential for you to, like I said, take a beat, to give yourself clarity and to give yourself peace. They go hand in hand together. And then outside of peace and clarity, I'm always going to wish you love. I do. I really want you to have love. I want you to have love from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet. And I'm talking good reciprocal love. I'm really blessed. I've been scrolling a lot on social media for the past few days, and I feel like I have just been surrounded in love. And it's really good because I am in love. My love, hey boo, I love you. And I feel nice with love. And what I saw on Threads recently was a post posted by Jessie Wu, and she was asking women to talk about what is the most considerate thing that their partner has done for them. And it was just such a beautiful litany of just from some of the smallest, most intentional things to obviously grand things of consideration. And I know for myself, I even posted because my love is just so consistently considerate of me. And it is something that I'm not used to, and I'm getting used to it. I'm growing in it. And it's changing me. And that's a whole nother conversation, because love changes you. It also magnifies your fears and your insecurities if those aren't dealt with as well. But that's a whole nother conversation too. But in the perspective of this place and this consideration and love, to be in considerate love, I'm so grateful for him. I thank God for him every day, because he is so considerate and thoughtful. And it is such a beautiful space to be in. But it was such a beautiful space as well to see so many women who could say so many beautiful things about their partners. And, because of course, the red pill people and all those things, which I really don't aspire to understand. I hear bits and pieces of it. My love actually educates me about it, which is cool. But it's, you hear all those things and people act like, women don't appreciate men, men don't appreciate women, vice versa, whatever. And it was just so wonderful to see, like I said, so many people. And it really reinforced in me the knowledge of love and how there is beautiful love out there. And many of us are experiencing it, and how blessed we are to be in that. And then there are a lot of people also who want to experience it. And so I say that to say, for those of you that are wanting, don't give up. It will come when you least expect it, and it will be beautiful. Just do the work on you. Live a beautiful life in the interim. Do those things and be open to love if you really want it, and love will come to you. But in the meantime, make sure that the relationships that you have are the love that you desire, that they are reciprocal, that they are considerate, that you are a manifestation of what you want in that, because you can't expect love to come to you if you can't give love as well. And so I really feel like love is a root. It is a growth. It is a strengthener. And especially in times like this, it's so essential. So I pray, like I said, that you are surrounded in goodness, surrounded in love, reciprocal love from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet. So I am praying for you peace, clarity, and love. And then rounding out my prayers, which I'm always going to do, because I always want you to be abundant on a financial level, because you can be a blessing to yourself and to other people. But I hope that those foundational prayers lead you to abundance in your spirit, that you will create memories with the people that you love, or even for yourself, that just warm your heart, warm your soul, because there's only so much money that we can chase. I mean, and you don't really want to chase money. We've talked about that. You want to have a spirit of believing that money comes to you, a spirit of manifestation, a belief of that in yourself, not of lack, but of more. But at the same time, being abundant in your spirit is so important. Being able to recognize that you are truly wealthy, and because you are surrounded in love, from loving people, loving family. The material stuff is just the icing on the cake. Don't lose sight of that. Be wealthy in your spirit, be abundant, and the love will just flow from you on all things. So those are my prayers for you. I am very excited to be back recording on Friday, August 8th. I have been traveling a bit lately. As you guys know, my love and I are long distance, so I've had an opportunity to kind of go back and forth and spend time with him, which is great. And I feel like that's how I've spent my summer, on the road. And it's exactly what I wanted to do. But I want to thank you guys for your support and encouragement. I'm excited to be back this week. It's a little different for me. It's funny because I had a whole other episode planned for today. I really did. I've kind of been thinking about some things in reference to dying to self. And I want to still talk about it, but it's funny how you think that you have a plan, and then God sends you to therapy, and and therapy shows you that, you know what, that plan that you had about dying to yourself, nah, girl, you thought it was about ego, and your therapist kind of helped you unpack that, yeah, no, it's not your ego that is creating the season for you. It is you. It is your fears. It is your childhood things that you haven't dealt with, and so many other layers. Because yes, y'all, you guys know I've talked to y'all about it before. I'm in therapy. I'm in therapy for my limiting behaviors. I've been in therapy for a minute, and I'm really excited about it. And when I say limiting behaviors, just for anyone's new, it's about the fact that a lot of times for me, I put limits on how far I can go in certain situations, on all levels of my life, based upon my fear, based of being not qualified, not worthy, or imposter syndrome. And it is at times been very crippling for me. And being honest, it's also created situations where I've made really poor decisions, financially, emotionally, physically, spiritually. And it's something that I really have had to work on. And a lot of those are rooted back to my childhood, because and don't get me wrong, I had a beautiful childhood with my parents, but during my childhood, I experienced a situation that caused me to lose my boundaries, and it wasn't something that I talked about, and it was something that I suppressed. And so I have recognized that even though I thought I was through it, because I had done the work, had talked about it, and, spoke it out and gave life, I really wasn't through with it. And I recognized that it's rearing its ugly head again, and it's causing me to place limits on myself. And really, because it's about trying to protect me versus trying to just sit in who I am, who I'm becoming. And I know that probably sounds like a lot, but I'm in a season of becoming. I'm changing. I'm evolving again. And I think we all go through those phases of our lives where we recognize that we're changing and evolving. I mean, I am. My life is different. I'm in love, and I'm doing all these things, and I'm getting older. I'm 52, about to be 53 in a few months, and I really feel it, like I'm changing. And it's not for the worse, it's for the better, all of it. But even in the change, I'm recognizing, there's still some places I have to grow. And especially when it comes to really having a relationship and being in love, because, as a relationship deepens and it gets better and grows, you have to get to those phases, especially as someone who is used to being an A-type personality, where you are vulnerable. And in the vulnerability, it's like you start to realize that there are things that are holding you back from being your most vulnerable, most authentic self. And you have to try to figure it out. And like I said, I'm recognizing that in me. And so I decided, you know what? Let's talk about it. Because like I said, I was going to talk about dying to self because I've been having this conversation with my love about dying to self as we are growing and evolving. We both are healing and growing and evolving. But I realized that in the process of it, that I still have some crooked places. I still have some areas where I need to grow, because I'm recognizing that old cycles will start to come back, and behaviors, self-protecting behaviors that are kind of creating situations where I'm not making the best decisions are popping up. And the consequences of those things are showing, and I need to make a different decision. I need to do something different. And so it's time for me to unpack it. What I thought might have been ego and this need to control and pride, it wasn't any of that. It was fear. And so I said, you know what? Let's talk about it, because I can't be the only person out here, going through this. And so that's where we are. And that's what this episode is about. And so I want to talk about first, before we kind of go into it a little bit more, let's talk about the link between trauma and control. We're also going to talk about, how fear can disguise itself as confidence, and why dying to self is about freedom and not self-erasure. Because ultimately what this is about is me recognizing that I'm going to have to die to myself in order to be the person that I'm supposed to be. And so, like I said, let's kind of talk about it in regards to ego, of course, the first link. And I think what we all have to understand is that, we all have this perception that ego is like very loud, very boisterous, but it really isn't. A lot of times people who have all this fluff, all the ego, or just loud and boisterous, they're the ones who are the most afraid. And a lot of times they're hiding behind the ego because it protects them. And we have to think about, if they're looking for something to protect them, what led to that? Which is where a lot of times many of us are dealing with childhood trauma that has planted seeds of fear within us. And when I say that, I mean, again, not trying to lay out pains for anyone, but we've all gone through some form of trauma. I think I had talked to you guys before about the fact that I had a conversation with a lot of my friends one time, my girlfriends, and we were talking about how many of us had been sexually violated in some way by a man. And I mean, it's amazing to me that you could actually probably sit in a room with your friends, a group of friends, and if you asked in the room for everyone to raise their hand who's been violated, you'd be surprised by the number of people who could associate with that. And a lot of times those are things that we just don't talk about, we swallow. And for myself, that has happened to me. And I wasn't going to say it, but it's like, I'm going to go ahead and say it because I've never really talked about it. I've never told my parents about it, but I was violated when I was in the 8th grade. And in that moment, I lost my ability to have boundaries. And it also was one of the things that led me to being such a good student, because I made it a vow that I was never going to allow my parents to come to school, because that's where it happened. And so I would push myself. I would make sure I was perfect. I would make sure I have control over everything, because there was no way that I was going to let my parents find out. Like, there are so many different layers to that. And I don't want to unpack it now, because I'm not ready to unpack that now. And this isn't something that I haven't talked about before, but I haven't talked about it in a long time, because again, you think that everything is cool until it's not. And so, just saying that to say that is something that I went through, and my way of dealing with it was suppression. My way of dealing with it was that I made a decision that I had to be better than what I was when it happened, because I had to make sure that no one found out. And the best way for me to make sure that no one found out was to make sure that I performed, that I excelled. Because if I performed and excelled, then there's no reason for my parents to come to school. Because I'm not going to lie, I was one of those kids when I was younger, elementary school, whatever. My parents lived at the schoolhouse, honey. They did. I am definitely a very nice person, but I gave my parents a run for their money when I was young. I'm going to attribute it to what my 2nd grade teacher, I remember, told my parents, is that I was bored and that I just needed a lot more stimulation than what was being provided at school. And so my parents just had to be mindful of that. And, just definitely different experiences as a child. But I say all that to say, yes, that is what it was. I didn't feel safe. And I think that's another reason why a lot of times things occur in our childhood, those traumas. There are moments where we lose our safety. There's moments where we lose our boundaries. There's moments where we feel like we may be overlooked, and you have this need to prove yourself. And so, like I said, you have this fear of not being safe, and that creates a need to control. And so for me, like I was mentioning to you, in that moment when I was violated, I lost my ability to have boundaries. And so my way of trying to get that back was control what people thought of me, control how I handled things. And I'm not saying it's bad, because it allowed me to excel in school very well. I've applied that all through my education. I graduated in the top 10% of my class in high school. I did all those things, but I was doing those things because I just didn't want anyone to see me. I didn't want to feel unprotected. I didn't want to let my parents down. I didn't want to let myself down, because I had felt like some way, somehow, I had done something that had contributed to what had happened to me. And so a lot of times what we think is ego is often just fear in a nice outfit. And I want to say it that way because, again, you got to think about sometimes either yourself or other people that you've been around that lead a little boisterous. And, sometimes I have to admit for myself, I can be a little boisterous. I try not to be, because I don't like a lot of attention. And I think that goes back to what happened to me and my loss of boundaries. I just want to exist. I want to be able to thrive. I want to be able to do great things, and everyone always feel wonderful about me. But underneath it all, I'm tearing myself apart, and I have torn myself apart. As I have mentioned to you guys before, I'm my toughest critic. And a lot of times it can be a matter of ego, and how we all have to sometimes strip away ego to understand that it's not necessarily ego, it is fear. And so then, now that we're talking about fear, let's dive a little deeper into it. Let's think about it, because there's another survival tactic, because that's really what this is. That's what I'm in. That's what I have been used to living in through trauma, is survival. It's control. And obviously, from my experience, from my story, like I was telling you guys, I really poured myself into my education. I became a bookworm. I made sure that that was where I thrived, where I felt seen. Knowledge, because in knowledge, nothing can hurt me. I wasn't interested in dating when I was in high school or any of that. I just kind of was like, I just need to focus on my books because I felt safe there. And because I was in control, I could thrive as hard as I pushed myself. I got the accolades. People didn't bother me because I felt good there. And that is one thing that control is as a survival skill from childhood. And now in adulthood, it's something that we all kind of sometimes hold on to. So think of those moments in yourself, if you have found that any of this relates to you, where you are using control because it creates a false sense of safety, because you understand the narrative of what it's going to be. You try to see ahead of what people are thinking. You try to see ahead of what people are doing so that you are always in control. You are always feeling safe. But one of the things that we have to remember in regards to control is that there's a cost. And the cost a lot of time is that it can affect you in so many different areas. I mean, let's talk about relationships. Sometimes, especially if you are in situations with people and you're not able to be your most authentic self and let go, it can create relationship strains. People feel managed versus feeling loved. And the reason they feel that way is because, you are only allowing so much of yourself to come out. And so people don't feel like you are able to really give to them and to be able to be open to them. And I remember even now thinking about it, just came to me. I remember in a relationship that I had at one point, I've had someone a long time ago tell me like, I just don't feel like you like me. Like I don't, I just don't feel your energy. And I dismissed it, what have you. But if I think about it in this moment, I realized I just didn't feel safe enough with you. I didn't feel comfortable enough with that person to give them that side of me. I wasn't in the capacity for that. And so I think about that sometimes in regards to, how I've grown and evolved as a person, how now I feel with my love, I'm able to give him that side of me, the most vulnerable parts of me, because I'm dealing with it, but I still now have more understanding of where the roots of that come from. And then let's talk about it in regards to missed opportunities. You become so busy trying to orchestrate how things and people are moving around you that you miss opportunities for, to have adventures, or even in promotions in your job. I mean, you are just so caught up in trying to control the narrative that you can't see the opportunity in front of you. Let's talk about that, because that is real. That is very real, because I'm not going to lie. A lot of times when you are trying to control everything, when you are so trying to navigate everybody's moves, you're exhausted mentally. You're exhausted. You don't have the energy to give it everything. And it's like you just constantly having to be on all the time because you are living behind this veil. It is very mentally exhausting. And so a lot of times it can lead to isolation. It can lead to pockets where you just can't be available because you don't have anything to give, is because you're not able to let yourself go and to be. And I'm saying that because I've lived in that space before. I'm very grateful I'm not in that space now, but I've lived there before. I remember I had with one of my old friends, we used to talk about people. I say, okay, well, then let's go into the war room. And in the war room, it was like we were strategists, and we were literally talking about people and breaking down relationships and situations and outcome. Like literally, I think we could have probably taken over the world in that room. And when I think about it now, hindsight being 2020, and God bless for healing and growth, I see that that was trauma bonding. Because she had experienced trauma, I had experienced trauma, and we were literally bonding over our traumas and our strategies, because that's how we were navigating life. We weren't allowing people to show us who they were and believing them. We were like, I see you, I don't believe you, and this is why, and breaking it down. And that is very unhealthy. And that is very time consuming. And that is very limiting behavior because it doesn't allow you to see the trueness of people. And so, again, I'm talking about this and sharing these things with you because I'm asking you to take a moment inside of yourself to ask yourself, is that something that you're doing? And if you recognize that inside of you, I'm saying that to say you can move past it. And you can be in spaces where you can be your most authentic self and feel safe. You just have to be willing to do the work. And I'm going to share and tell you how, so you're not alone. So yeah, like it's those moments, and it's exhausting, and you recognizing and you're seeing, hopefully in this, how fear is shaping, our narratives and control. But let's talk about real life consequences of not getting these in together, like not recognizing that this is an area of ourselves that we have to die to, because we started talking about missed opportunities, but let's keep it real. Let's talk about the money. Yeah. Because that's the one thing that all of us can kind of understand, everybody's thinking about, financials. So let's talk about the fact that because you can't get past yourself, because you can't see other people, you can't be your most authentic self. You're spending so much time trying to understand and control, you can miss money. And it can cause you to put your money in the wrong things. Sometimes for some people, because you're seeking validation, you see people who overinvest in appearances to prove their worth. Let's all think about it. We've all gone through cycles of our lives where we just wanted to be, that person. You just wanted to be a part of the clique. You just wanted to do it. And even though you knew you shouldn't do it, but you did it anyway. I'm not going to lie. I've spent money in many different ways that I definitely shouldn't have. And I'm learned and still learning, that, that can be something that can overcome. But I'll be honest, I think as you get a little older, you start to recognize more about what really matters. That is not about the money. It's not about trying to have the showy things. It's the littlest things. Sometimes you think you want the Cartier ring, and then you recognize, you know what? I don't need the Cartier ring. I can take this $30, $50 tungsten ring, and it just mean more to me than that Cartier ring. It's all about the value. It's all about the intention. It's all about where your heart space is and where you are with that. And so then let's also talk about how it can manifest in regards to not asking for help or mentorship. And especially, like I said, you're trying to grow, and you can't grow because you are only relying on your knowledge because that's all you trust. But you could miss out the opportunity to learn something from some amazing other person that's going to help you get to your next level, help you get to your next role. It all works together. Especially professionalism, because in a professional space, collaboration, and a lot of times war room behavior, that's what I'm going to call it, where you're like trying to be the strategist and trying to see everything forest for the trees. It can create situations where you don't collaborate, especially if your discernment is not strong. Because we all sometimes say, well, I got a bad feeling about this person. I got this. What is that bad feeling really rooted on? Has that person shown you any behavior of why you shouldn't trust them? Or is that really about something in you being triggered? Really, these are real conversations that you have to ask yourself. And then are you defensive when constructive feedback is given? Yeah, and that's a real one, because I know for myself, I have been in spaces of my life where when people tried to give me constructive feedback, I couldn't receive it. I didn't bite anyone's head off, but I was that type of person who always tried to rationalize my perspective. I don't know if that's just me, or maybe you can relate, but I think a lot of times, that's where to me the ego kicks in, and we are trying to justify why someone is wrong for observing a different behavior inside of us, when we have to recognize that people have the ability to see things sometimes that we're not capable of seeing. And just because you don't agree with their feedback doesn't mean you need to rationalize it. You don't need to try to justify it. You just maybe need to listen to it. And sometimes we're not always in the space where we can listen, because again, you're operating from that place of fear. You're operating from that place of ego where it's like, I have to be the best. I have to be in control. And for me, I honestly went through a lot of that in my younger phases of life. I felt like I wasn't, that's not accurate. I was doing this because of X, Y, and Z, and try to justify it to the point where the other person's like, okay, you're right. And not recognizing that person may not necessarily be agreeing with you. They're just saying that so that you can just move on. They're just trying to help you grow. If you decide that you don't want to grow based upon what they're telling you, that's on you. But at least they gave you the feedback. But for yourself, because you didn't receive that opportunity to learn, to grow, to get better, you wind up stunted. And that happens. And sometimes you don't even recognize it's happening until you're in a position for 14 years and you didn't have to be in that position. But because you didn't take the advice that was given to you, you held yourself back. And I'm saying that from experience. But that's a whole nother thing. And we can keep talking about it. But if you see that in yourself, then recognize that might be an area that you need to work on. And then ultimately, let's really talk about it from an emotional standpoint, because when things don't go our way, and especially when you're operating from the space, anxiety really hits hard. It does. Like you're afraid that it's all going to fall apart, that they're going to see the cracks, that you're going to be a failure and a disappointment. And it's really hard to be in that place because you're allowing fear to create things inside of you that aren't true. Because I really, truly have learned people just do not think about us as much as we think they do. And a lot of times the things that we have allowed our anxiety to create within us are so far from what reality is. But when we're in that moment of it, it is very hard to be able to control our thoughts, to be able to regulate ourselves enough to move forward. And so again, it creates anxiety. And then with that, you wind up having, like we kind of talked about earlier, you have that difficulty trusting others' intentions. You question constantly, not from a place of, just natural being inquisitive and just wanting to understand. It's more so why? What's your ulterior motive? Everybody has an ulterior motive. That's where I really don't like the term haters and people just constantly talking about this person hating on me, blah, blah, blah. I think a lot of times it's just hurt people hurting other people and operating from that space. And we don't recognize that. And so we wind up turning it into something more than what it is. And so we've identified, obviously, a lot of different things that can occur in this moment and the consequences of it. But let's now kind of start to pivot because, that's a lot. It is. And I have to admit, I'm a little triggered even talking about it like this. But it is, let's talk about where we're at now and why dying to ourselves is actually, or discovering that dying to ourselves and healing is a path to freedom. And again, like I said, I'm going to reiterate again, when I say dying to myself, because I brought it up a few times, and it's going to be the title of this episode, it's just what dying to ourself looks like when trauma is the root. And making the decision, first and foremost, that we want to let go of control as a form of trust. Yeah. We have to let go of control. We have to recognize that life is what it is, and you do not have to try to be the master strategist of every moment of your life. You have to be willing to give yourself a break. And in that, you have to be willing to allow vulnerability without it being labeled as weakness. And I know that might be a controversial take, but it is so important to recognize that, because I still feel like society kind of makes us feel like being vulnerable is a sign of being weak. And for those of us that have been in the space where we are so used to being the master strategist, the one in control, it is very hard to be vulnerable because our minds have somehow allowed us to believe that our vulnerability is a weakness. And we have to stop that, because we have to understand that being vulnerable is an opening. It is an opening. It is a gateway. It is a path to our freedom, because we are not equipped to do everything for everyone all the time. And I'm going to say that again. We have to get to the point where we recognize that being vulnerable is not a weakness, because we have finally decided that we are not responsible for doing everything for everyone all the time. Because a lot of that is rooted up in that. I mean, that's really where it's about the strong one, the strong friend. Oh, she's such a strong woman, such an A-type woman, such an independent woman. A lot of times we've been placed in the situations where we have to be all these things based upon circumstances that have happened to us. And we thrive in it. We exist in it. And we move through it. But we don't recognize, like I talked about earlier, the damages that can be done to us in it. And so we have to give ourselves the freedom to let it go, the freedom to stop being the strong one, because we have in this moment recognized that our vulnerability is not a weakness, and it is not our job to be everything to everyone at all times, and that even in our weakness, we are still valuable. We are still beautiful. We are still strong. It even takes even more strength to me to be vulnerable, to be weak, because you're open. You're open. And that is such an act of courage. And we don't give ourselves the credit for that as much as we need to. And that in that moment of being open, we'll be okay because we have boundaries. And our boundaries are going to allow us to be protected without building a wall. And I really want to say that again, that our boundaries are going to allow us to be protected without building walls. Because you see, that's what we were doing as the master strategist, the person always in the control of things, always trying to manipulate the situation, never allowing anyone to get too close. We were building walls. We were building walls that are stopping us from having the love we want. We were building walls that are blocking us from the financial blessings and opportunities that we want. We were building walls that are creating spaces where we even don't know who we are, where we're not able to be our truest, most softest selves. And it's time for us to recognize that we don't need walls. We just need boundaries. We need boundaries, because those boundaries that we put up, if we really think about what we need and what we value, are going to protect us without keeping everyone else out. Because we need somebody. You need somebody. I need somebody. We all need somebody. And we have to get to that point where we recognize that boundaries are the thing that will allow us to be able to have people in our lives. And so you have to dive into that. It's time to dive into it. It's time to get real about it. And that leads me right into us putting tools in place, because boundaries are tools. And so I think what we have to all recognize is on this journey, I'm on it with you too. Like I said, my old habits are starting to reappear. And so I have to check myself. I think it's about making the decision to check ourselves every day as we are navigating through life, asking ourselves, are the decisions that we make being fear-based or faith-led? because there's a distinct difference. Sometimes you are not going to be able to see the ground when you're making decision. Sometimes you're not going to be able to see all the details or know all the details. And sometimes you're going to have to be able to recognize that you are making decisions out of either fear, or are you making it out of faith? And when I say faith, I'm talking about that real discernment, the God-given discernment, listening for the whispers, being so open, so tuned in that you can hear it so it can help guide you, versus hearing all the loud negative talk. Because that's one thing to me that I think is very unique. Fear is super loud. Like, fear has the biggest mouth I have ever seen. But boy, I tell you, faith, God, he whispers. And so it's like you have to be able to recognize, because sometimes, unfortunately, when the fear is up and it's talking so loud, it's overshadowing what faith is trying to tell you to do. And that's where you have to do that check-in with yourself. And that's where it's like, how do you start to address it? And that is, I'll be honest, through therapy, learning how to control your thoughts, the fears, prayer, journaling. I mean, there's so many different things, but you got to start to have that in your life. And it really all begins with just asking yourself those questions as you're moving through. One question: is this decision fear-led or faith-led? And really thinking about the answer. And not forgetting, fear is extremely loud. Faith is a whisper. And then you also have to, recognize that, people in your life, you got some good eggs in your life who can spot when you're slipping into fear-based control. There are. We do. Everybody's got some good eggs in their life. And I'm calling our friends, our real good friends, good eggs, because those good eggs are the ones who can gently check you and say, hey, are you okay? You don't seem like yourself. You seem like you got a lot going on. What's going on? And, instead of pushing that person away, ask yourself before you push them away, are you making this decision based on fear or on faith? And give yourself the opportunity to have conversation. Give yourself the opportunity to hear what they could be bringing. Trust them, because you do trust them. It's just a lot of times, like I said, you're so used to wanting to be in control. But remember, these are your good eggs. These are the people that you trust. Listen to those people, because we need those people in our life who can see us, who can feel us. Like, I know from my love, he can hear my fears. He can hear my confusion. He can hear my frustrations, and he will just come to me so lovingly, like, my love. When you say, I love you, I hear a sadness. What's going on? Like, talk to me. And I have to open up. I have to talk. And he gives me grace to understand that I might not be able to articulate in this space, but he at least gives me the opportunity to be vulnerable with him, to at least say what I'm going through. And I'm not just speaking about it from a romantic standpoint. It's just I'm thinking about him right now, so I can't help it. But I'm just thinking about it even from my other friends. They can sense it from me. You have those same people in your life, and when they come to you, be open, be receptive, trust, let your walls down. Remember, boundaries build protections. Walls keep people out, and you need people in. So as we are wrapping this up, I want to give you an affirmation. I want to give you an affirmation because I'm going to be saying it with you as we are moving through this, because, this is just the beginning. I would love to say this is like a one and done kind of conversation. Like, I've discovered all these things and healing. No, I really feel like this is going to be a conversation we are going to come back to, because I'm on the journey. I'm healing. I'm becoming. My life is changing, and I got to deal with old stuff. So I'm not beating myself up about it today. I don't want you to beat yourself up about it if you have come to this realization. Instead, I want you to say this affirmation. Today, I release control so I can live free. I release ego so I can live whole. I die to the me that fear created so I can rise as the me that faith is building. This is our opportunity together to stop allowing fear to pretend to be confidence in our life. It's time for us to be exactly who we were supposed to be. Because faith is building something new in me, and I know it's building something new in you. And it's time for us to surrender. It's time to us to be open and receptive to it. And so I want you to be open and receptive to it too. There's room and healing for all of us, and it comes in seasons. And if you're in this season with me, just know that you're not alone. I'm right here with you, healing and growing and loving and living and thriving all at the same time. And we can do this together. And if this is not your season where you are healing, if this is a season where you're surviving, please know I understand that too. And it's okay if you're not ready to make those decisions today. But when you're ready, just know that you're not alone and that you will make it through, because we all go through different cycles of life. And this is just one of the many cycles. So that is this week's episode. I hope that I inspired you to tap into yourself a little bit more, to figure out where you might need to die to yourself in order to be the faith-led person that you were called to be, and to heal some of the areas of yourself that you've been thinking about. And I hope I've encouraged you that maybe you will share this with someone in your life who you feel is on this same journey, and they may need a little encouragement, a little guidance, a little suggestion. Because for me, this is really about all of us healing and growing and living our best lives. Nobody's got this thing all wrapped up, locked up, living the perfect life. We are all going to go through. We just have to be willing to support each other on the journey. That's our title, our rent, our mortgage, our gift of being here in this space. We should help each other and inspire each other to be the best versions of ourselves. So I want you to be the best versions of you. So I ask that you hopefully will like, share, subscribe, send me notes, let me know how you're doing, how I can support you. I really want to thank you guys, like I said again, for all your continued support. And I am so grateful for this community. You all mean the world to me. And this is just the beginning. So yes, I will be back next week with another episode, probably a continuation. I think what I'm going to do is look at this possibly being a series. I don't know if it'll be an every week kind of series, but I think it will be probably something that we touch on every month. Because I'll be honest, I go to therapy every 3 weeks. So it's not something that it's not something that I'm living. Oh, I'm not even going to say that. I am living through it every day. But I don't want it to feel like, oh my God, this is what we talk about, because, there's a lot of other life going on. But this is a real big root of the life. So essentially what I'm going to say is I am going to write a series around dying to self. And we are going to do some check-ins and some healing and talk about some of the things that we can do to help navigate through and support each other. So let's try to build that out. And I'll be back with that. And I'll be definitely sharing over the course of the week some affirmations and stuff to try to help navigate through, because this is a whole new thing, back up again, but we're going to get it done, and we're going to build and grow and learn and love together. So I'm going to stop rambling now. I'm going to let you guys know that all of my information will be in the show notes. Please don't hesitate to send me a note, whatever. I would love to support you. I hope that you will enjoy the rest of your weekend and that you will take care of yourselves and each other, and we will talk soon. Bye-bye.